Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Nicholas, and I am a proud member of the graduating class. And it is my distinct privilege to welcome you all here today, our graduating JD and graduate students, for the first major event of our graduation weekend, a conversation between Dean Traynor and Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. During our journeys to and through law school, all of us have felt the far-reaching effects of legislation, both its benefits and its sometimes negative unintended consequences. In fact, for many of us, the opportunity to study the law down the street from where the law is made is what drew us to Georgetown. Many of you had the opportunity to work on the Hill and gain personal experience with the lawmaking process during your time here. And all of us have had the opportunity to learn from the lawmakers who have been our neighbors for the last 3 years. There is no one more perfect for us to hear from to kick off this weekend than Speaker Pelosi. And so on behalf of the graduating class, I'd like to thank her for her willingness to spend time with us today. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the Dean of the Law School, Dean William Traynor.
Well, thank you, Ashley, and we are so thrilled to have with us today Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi. So please join me again in a round of applause for Speaker Pelosi. So this is the 5th year of our Dean's Lecture to the graduating class, which we began with Justice Kagan in 2014. And since then, we've been deeply fortunate to listen at the end of our law students' careers at Georgetown to Justice Ginsburg, Justice Alito, Professor Henry Louis Gates, and John Podesta. And the idea behind these lectures is reflected in Ashley's welcome. Georgetown Law is a school that's dedicated to justice. Law is but the means, justice is the end, is our motto. And our location in Washington, D.C. gives our students an unparalleled opportunity to understand the law in action. And the combination of mission and education equips you for careers in the law in which you have the capacity to make the world a more just place. And this week, on Sunday, you'll begin that career. And as you graduate, as you commence, we're fortunate to have this lecture series in which giants of our time reflect on some of the great issues that we confront and also offer you their thoughts as you start your careers. So it's my privilege to begin by introducing the speaker, and then I'll ask her some of questions that I've heard talking to you and some questions that some of you have sent in. So if I ask your question, I will call your name and I will ask you to stand. Okay? Giving you advance notice. And it will probably be the last cold call of your life. So the speaker is, of course, an icon and one of the great leaders of our time. She is the 52nd Speaker of the United States House of Representatives. She made history in 2007 when she was elected as the first woman to serve as Speaker. And now in her 3rd term as Speaker, she made history again in January when she regained her position, the first time that had been done in more than 50 years. I think that also deserves Her contributions have been historic, and have reflected her commitment to fighting for the people, to lowering health care costs, to increasing workers' pay through strong economic growth and rebuilding America, and to cleaning up corruption. So just to highlight a few of the extraordinary achievements of the Speaker's career. In 2009, working in partnership with President Obama, Speaker Pelosi led House passage of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which created and saved millions of American jobs and really saved the economy. Speaker Pelosi was also a principal architect of the landmark Affordable Care Act, which has guaranteed protection for all Americans with pre-existing medical conditions and provided affordable health coverage for tens of millions. And one of the great focuses of her career, we were just talking about that before, has been combating climate change. And perhaps most notably in this area, in 2007, she led the way in enactment of comprehensive energy legislation that raised vehicle fuel efficiency for the first time in generations. In addition to all of these historic achievements, we're particularly proud of the fact that she is also a very good friend to Georgetown. I mean, for us, that's particularly important. She's a graduate of Trinity, and actually is joined by Rita Meyer, who she went to school with, and her husband, Denny. The Speaker has an honorary doctorate from Georgetown in 2002. Her husband, Paul Pelosi, graduate of the School of Foreign Service, class of '62, is on the SFS Board of Advisors and served as chair. 3 of her 5 children attended Georgetown, including her son, Paul Jr., who graduated from Georgetown Law. And she currently has a grandson at the School of Foreign Service as an undergraduate. And I just wanted to make sure that you all know that in January, the university established the Paul Pelosi Public Service Scholars Program, which aims to identify undergraduates in the School of Foreign Service who are committed to careers in public service and prepare them for global leadership. And recently, she appointed our own Doug Letter, who some of you might have worked with at our Institute for Constitutional Advocacy and Protection, to be general counsel for the House. It's an amazing career. It's unparalleled. And I also want to congratulate the Speaker on being selected this year to receive the John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award. And Caroline Kennedy, in a statement announcing the selection, very appropriately said, "Speaker Pelosi is," and I'm quoting, "the most important woman in American political history." Ladies and gentlemen, Speaker Pelosi. Okay, so we have a series of questions. We're going to start with public service. Okay. As I mentioned, Speaker Pelosi, you're the recipient of this year's prestigious Profile and Courage Award, which many people regard as the Nobel Prize for public service. And public service, I know, is obviously very important to you. And I also know that a very famous Georgetown Law graduate, Father Drinan, was an important figure in your life and career. And we at Georgetown Law put a great deal of emphasis on public service for our students through our Office of Public Service and Community Service, our Bloom Public Interest Scholars Program. We have 13 Georgetown Law alums in Congress right now. One of the things that I've heard as we get ready for graduation are really 2 different sentiments. Some people see the difficulties of life in public service and have decided it's not for them. But for other people, they think it's an opportunity to make a difference. And so let me start what would you advise students about a career in public service? And for those who are considering running for office, where do they start? Oh, you got your own. Yep. No expense spared.
Thank you very much, Dean, for the invitation to be here. What an honor to be with your graduating class and all that we see about the aspirations for the future and the beautiful grounding in values and education that they have received at Georgetown Law. I am here with my college roommate, Rita Meyer from Trinity College. When we were in college, she was dating Dennis Meyer, who was a student at Georgetown Law, so our connection goes way back. And I love seeing all of you, but if I look distracted, it's because a baby came in. And everything is about the future. Everything about public service and government and the rest is about what we do to make the future better. That is a responsibility we received from our founders. That is responsibility we have to our men and women in uniform. And I want to thank Ms. Nicholas, where's she? There. Ashley, thank you for your service to our country. We have an obligation. All that we do is to honor the vision of our founders, the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform, and the aspirations of our children, and making a future that is better for them. And you are the future in this room. You mentioned Father Drinan. Father Drinan, many of you know the story of Father Drinan. He was a member of Congress. And then His Holiness the Pope said that he had to choose between being a member of Congress and being a priest. Thou art a priest forever, so he remained a priest and left Congress. I don't know if it was a comfort to His Holiness or not that he was replaced by an LGBTQ leader, Barney Frank. But in any event, all of God's children. Tomorrow we'll be passing the Equality Act, which opens up the Civil Rights Act to LGBTQ community for all protection. Dean, your question was loaded with so many aspects of it, but just from Father Drinan. When I became speaker, I asked him if he would officiate at the Mass the day before the swearing in at Trinity College. And all the members came, and my former colleague, classmates, and that. And Father Drinan gave the most beautiful speech, and it goes to your question. He said, as I look around this church, I see a people with commitment to a better future, conviction in what they believe in. But I want to know how many have the other C, courage to do the job. That's why I'm honored to have the Profile on Courage Award, and I'll quote Father Drinan there, because courage really makes all the difference. Now, it's no courage for me to do what I do. I'm from San Francisco, and it's not about courage, it's about values, it's about opportunity. Take advantage of it. But I'll tell you this other side story about Father Drinan. So this was a beautiful sermon. And afterward I said to him, Father Drinan, all the members of Congress who were there loved your sermon so much, they're all competing to be the one to put your sermon in the congressional record. Which of our colleagues would you like to put your sermon in the congressional record? And he said, Madam Speaker, I want my sermon to be placed in the congressional record by the Speaker of the House. That was Father Drinan. In any event, when people talk about public service, well, I was raised in my family. My father was in Congress when I was born. When I was in first grade, he became the mayor of Baltimore. When I first met Rita Murray, then Rita Murray, now Rita Murray Meyer, at Trinity College, he was still the mayor of Baltimore all those many years later. And we were instilled with the idea that public service was a noble calling. That in our family, I was born into a family that was deeply Catholic, fiercely patriotic, loving America, proud of our Italian-American heritage, and in our case, staunchly democratic. And we saw a connection between our public manifestation of attitude toward people as an extension of our faith. There's a spark of divinity in every person. We respect everyone as God's children, and that we have responsibilities to each other. So if you have any thought about public service, and coming here, you do, and I would just say this, you may have many options in your life, and I'm certain that you do. And when candidates say to me, well, you want me to run for Congress, but I could be this, and I can be that, and I can be this, and I said, well, that's good, because we don't want anybody in Congress who doesn't have options. But if you decide, because it is an insatiable beast in terms of the time and the demands of it, if you decide that you want to step into the arena that Teddy Roosevelt spoke about so beautifully, not to be a spectator, but to be in the arena, if you decide to step into the arena, know why. Know your purpose. I say to candidates or prospective candidates or just young people who, like you, who may be considering such a thing, know your purpose. And you have to do that in anything that you do, but in public service, know your purpose. Is it about climate? Is it about justice, criminal justice, juvenile justice? Is it about education? What is it that is your passion? Know your purpose, why you step into the arena. Know your subject. Know something about it so that when you're talking about it, people respect your judgment. Your why, your what. Know how. Think strategically. How would you achieve the goals that you take us closer to the vision that you have for our country based on the knowledge that you have and know what you need to learn. Why, what, how. But the most important part of it all is to have the confidence of all of that, but the humility to listen, to learn from others, and especially from the constituents that you want to represent. The connection you make with them is everything. This is all intellectual. The connection is from the heart. Your authenticity about who you are, why you want to do this, what drives you and what you know about that, and how you plan to attract others to you in that venture, or join in with them. Collaboration, very important. But authenticity being the most important part of it, because people see, many people in politics have shared visions and this or that, but you are the only authentic you. And that's why I say, especially to some of the young women who might have some hesitation, just know your power. There's nobody like you. Your authentic, individual, unique contribution that you can make. And when you step into the arena, be ready. Because you really, you have to be ready to take a punch, and you have to be ready to throw a punch. I thought we were talking honestly here right now. And because it is, if you are effective, you will be a target. That's for sure. Because if you want to preserve the environment, this beautiful gift of God, this planet, if you believe, as do I, that it's God's creation, then we have a moral responsibility to protect it. But even if you don't share that religious belief, but that we have a responsibility to future generations to pass it on in a responsible way, you'll be a target, because there'll be forces at work whose financial interest is to not make that happen. And the list goes on. If you're concerned about gun safety and that drives you because of personal experience or whatever, and your sense of community, and you get in the arena and you're effective in making that case, you will be a target by the special dark interest on the other side of that. And that is not to label people who believe in the Second Amendment or hunters and gun owners. Many of them believe in gun violence protection in terms of background checks and the rest. So I'm not painting everyone with the same brush, but I am saying you'll be a target. If you're not effective, you might not be a target, but but be effective, be a target, make a difference in all of it. But it is a sacrifice to your family in terms of the time that it takes and the rest. So they have to share your purpose, your why as well. And I've been very blessed. My dear husband, Paul, who went to Georgetown undergrad, as you mentioned, served as chairman of the board of the Foreign Service School for years now, emeritus. He's been really a good sport about all of this.
So when you entered politics, what was your purpose?
My purpose, my why remains the same why. Every morning I get up, don a suit of armor, eat nails for breakfast, and get ready. Get ready for the fight. And my purpose is very simply, my husband Paul and I have 5 children. It was the joy of our lives, just such an exciting thing. Now we have 9 grandchildren. But then, going back then before, I couldn't tolerate the fact that 1 in 5 children, now 5, 1 in 5 children in America goes to sleep hungry at night, lives in poverty, and this is the greatest country that ever existed in the history of the world. Why is that the case? Why is it still the case? Because there are forces at work who, well, not to go into that, my why is that I care about that, and I know about the subject, being a mother of 5. And by the way, I would say to anyone, mom back there, wear your banner as a mom, as a gold star. That is one of the most challenging jobs in the world, and mastering that is a real accomplishment and something not to be diminished when you go into the public arena. Somebody says, well, I'm just a mom. No, you are a mom. That's not just a mom. And so that was my motivation. Now, I never intended to run for Congress. I'm just speaking to you in case you're in this same boat. I never intended to run for anything. It's basically a shy person, right, Rita? But I really, that wasn't, I was chair of the California Democratic Party. I love the causes and the candidates of the Democrats, and I knew how to advance that because that's how I grew up. But I never wanted to be the person in front. And then until people our congresswoman was ill, she was passing away, she asked me to run. I said, I've never even thought about running for office. 2 months later, I was the nominee of the Democrats in San Francisco, and that in San Francisco is almost like being elected. I still had to be elected in June, but in April. She died February 1st. April 7th was election day to replace her. June 9th, I was sworn in as a member of Congress. Then I never intended to run for leadership. I loved what I was doing, appropriations and intelligence. I loved my work. I just couldn't get enough of the substance of it and the policy of it, and working in many ways in a bipartisan way on those 2 committees. They were not particularly partisan at that time, and then my colleagues started saying, "You should run for leadership. You should run for leadership." And I was like, "No, this is not what. I'm not even going to be here that long." 30 years later. But so then, they encouraged me to run, so then I ran. And one of the reasons I ran, I was really tired of losing. We won in 94, we lost in 94, 96, 98, 2000, all that. And I was like, whoa, I know how to win. So I'm going to take responsibility. And we had some big successes in California politically that gave me the policy opportunity. But to my sisters here, the young women who are in the room, like my daughters or almost granddaughters, when I was running, the men were saying, who said she could run? Oh my goodness, poor babies. Who said she could run? And then they said, well, there are a lot more women in Congress now, and they would like to see a woman speaker, but they think she's the best, and blah, 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 because you can't ever say you should be for Nancy because she's a woman. That would be the losing campaign. You just have to say, your candidate is the best, whatever. So then they said, well, why don't the women just make a list of all the things that they'd like to see done that are different from now, and we'll do them. Double poor babies. That was just not going to be happening. So anyway, then I ran and won, and blah, 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 and Speaker of the House. And it is a very interesting thing, because when I was Speaker before, I was so busy, passing our energy bill with President Bush, actually, Then when President Obama became president, all the glorious things that we could accomplish. So I was just busy. So this time they said, well, you're more, shall we say, out there, unplugged, so to speak, on all this. And I said, you know why? Because I was busy then before. I wasn't sort of saying, I'm the Speaker of the House and I want people to know. I want young women, I want women, whether they're young or whether they're young coming into the public arena, to have confidence, to know that President, Vice President, Speaker of the House, the third highest position in the country, but really breaks my heart to be introduced as the most powerful woman, because I was so certain that we would have a woman president by now. And we must, and hopefully it will be soon. I don't know when. But in any case, but I do think it's important to take credit for what you are doing. Don't underestimate you, the power of you. And so I'm trying to say, modesty forbids. Growing up as an Italian, American, Catholic, modesty, we were instilled with modesty. In fact, Dean, when I was elected Speaker the first time, you get elected in the caucus and then you go to the floor a couple months later. But when I was elected in my caucus, when I went up to the podium, the chairman, then Rahm Emanuel, mayor of Chicago now, he said, he was the chair, and so he was introducing me up. He said, your parents would be so proud of you as Speaker. And it just jarred me, because I thought, my parents just wanted me to be holy. Isn't that what our parents wanted, Rita? It wasn't about being Speaker of the House, it was about being a good person, being holy. And I said to him, they just wanted me to be holy. So it was kind of a leap forward culturally for a person of my generation to become the first woman Speaker of the House. Yeah.
That's right. That's great advice. Actually, the majority of our students are women, so your advice on leadership is very important. Now, and what have you observed about, so when you joined Congress in '87, there were 23 women in the House, and now there are 102.
No, 6.
106? 106. That deserves applause.
102 without our delegates, and one of our delegates is Eleanor Holmes Norton, whom I'm sure you think should be
As a matter of fact, about 2 weeks ago, we dedicated our green in honor of Congresswoman Norton, which was really
Glad
great.
that you did that. Thank you so much for doing that.
No, she's a great leader as well.
She's fabulous, and she loves Georgetown.
So what have you observed, to talk about kind of the larger number of women in Congress, what have you observed about the rising group of women leaders in Congress?
It's the most exciting thing. Again, gentlemen, without all the due respect in the world that I have to all of you, it is very exciting when you think that we've had 200 years. When I went to Congress, 23 women out of 435 in the House of Representatives, 2 out of 100 in the Senate. So on our side, we had 12. On their side, they had 11. We made a decision. This has to change. At the beginning, the men were not too fearful of us, 23 out of 435, that was nice, Till our numbers grew, then it was like, what are they all standing in the well for together? Why are they wearing the same color today, What does that mean? But we made a decision on our side that every election we would add more women, and that's a decision. That's a decision that you go and make. So now, no offense to anybody, but now there are 106 members of Congress, women members of Congress. 91 Democrats, 15 Republicans. Because they did not make the same decision. And I hope they would. I hope they will, because nothing is more wholesome for the political process or government than the increased participation of women in government, politics, and leadership therein. And I think that applies to the military, to the corporate world, to the academic world, and to many segments of our society and our economy. But I'll know for sure it is important in the Congress of the United States. So now we have 91, we have 35 new women in the House this time. That's a remarkable thing. They replaced some of the women we had, so it's not a complete total increase. But it is what they bring in diversity in terms of some veterans, and we're very proud, some in the intelligence field, in security, some from the academic world, some from business, some from elective office, a whole array. And they're just spectacular, including, for the first time, we've never had a Native American woman, now we have two. One LGBT from Kansas, and I take pride in the fact that in our just say, Dean, you remember, nobody was born here yet, but you understand when the Watergate babies came to Congress. This was a big class in 1976. You're shaking your head. You remember. This was a big class, transformative, newcomers, fresh eyes on politics and the rest. Fabulous. Some of my best friends, George Miller, as you know, and all. Not one of them had a gavel in the first year, chaired a subcommittee of Congress. In our freshman class, because of decisions we have made, 18 freshmen are chairs of subcommittees in the Congress of the United States. 10 of them are women. 10 of them are women. So we're very proud of the leadership role immediately they'll have. I was saying to the dean earlier that they were saying, well, if all these women, you'll have more child care issues and this or that. I said, no, we always have had that. That's always been a priority for us. And we want these women to take even a bigger role in the national security of our country, the economic security of our country, all of the issues that we consider every issue a woman's issue. So yes, we will attend to our what I've traditionally been thought of as women's issues, but we consider every issue a woman's issue. And we're really very proud of our women in national security, Ashley, and thank you again for your leadership there. They're great, though. They're just absolutely fabulously great. And I don't remember if you saw the State of the Union. Don't worry if you didn't. But the president... The president was almost taking credit for the fact that there were so many more women in Congress. And in some ways, he does deserve some credit because... But he said, look at all these women. We were all in white that day, and there they were, 91 Democratic women in white. It was a beautiful sight to behold. But here's the thing. This happened, I said we made a decision to, but women made a decision too. Women made a decision to march the day after the inauguration. Women marched for their purpose, for their why, whether it was women's health, whether it was gun safety, whether it was climate change, whether it's juvenile justice, whether it was gun safety, did I say that already? Whatever it was. They marched for their but they had a commonality of values, a commonality of, they had shared values about making the future better. They marched, and then they ran, and women voted, and women won, and now women lead in the Congress of the United States. So they are doing a wonderful job.
It's remarkable, and you've played such a major role in making this possible.
Played a big role.
So actually, one thing I'd like to focus on for a moment is on your leadership style. So actually, Professor Hilary Sale, and I'm not going to ask Professor Sale to stand, but if she could raise her hand. Professor Sale asks, how would you characterize your leadership style and how it's changed over time? And can you offer key strategies that have helped you throughout the years?
Oh my goodness. We're never going to get around to impeachment.
Well.
When I respond to you, I think, let me say it this way. When we first had our early meetings, when I was speaker the first time, people would come up to me afterward and say, do you understand how different that meeting would have been if a man were chairing it? Because this is about listening, truly listening. It's about consensus building. We never lose a vote because we build what is our purpose? What is our knowledge of our possibilities? What is our strategy to get it done? And we build consensus with a vision, knowledge, strategy to get it done. And that is why we have been successful. And I say we because it's not just about me. It's about my committee chairs and about the enthusiasms in different categories that members bring to it. Let me just say this one straight. When I was a mom, and I still am, but when I was a mom at home, I had these little children, and one of our passions was to go to the library and volunteer at the library in San Francisco. And they were little kids. We, put away books and all that stuff. And one day, the mayor of San Francisco, who was my neighbor, Joe Alioto, this is a long time ago. The kids were, this was in the 70s. I mean, they were babies. He said, Nancy, what are you doing? Making a big pot of pasta? I said, no, Mr. Mayor, I'm reading the newspaper. But he, that's how he envisioned things. He's Italian-American, we're neighbors. I said, no, Mr. Mayor, I'm reading the newspaper because right now the children are home from school, they're playing, I have their dinner ready, and the New York Times used to come at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in San Francisco. Now it comes by the wire, but this was ancient history. So he said, I'm calling to ask you to be a member of the board of the library commission, a member of the library commission. And I said, no, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to do that. I love the library. He said, I know you love the library. I love the library. We'll do this anyway. I don't need to have a title to be a volunteer at the library. Now, this is a man who asked me if I was cooking at the beginning of the conversation, who said, Nancy, have what you do be anointed officially. If you're doing the work, don't say, I won't take the title, because you deserve the recognition. You deserve the recognition. You will have a vote on the library. You'll be a commissioner of the city. People will care about your opinion. And he was absolutely right. It made a tremendous difference. That was my first official involvement. And I thought every young woman should hear this. Every mom should hear this. Don't just do the work and have the satisfaction that you were doing good things. If you can get the recognition, it might not be a commission, or it might be, but at least there'll be the recognition that you can be counted on to do something, so when something else comes along, that it's an ever-widening circle of responsibility. Who knows, you could be Speaker of the House. But I do say you have to, and it's uncharacteristic from some of our generation, and hopefully not in yours, to be assertive about what you have done and take credit for it. Take credit for it. And so that is one story that I tell about women having to assert themselves. Because how many times have women been at the table and they'll say, I think we should do this, that, and that. 2 people later, some guy says, I think we should do this, this, and that, without even saying, Rita said that 2 minutes earlier. And then all of a sudden the other guys will say, that is such a great idea. Get out of here. Then I don't, this may have never happened to you, but ask your moms or something. And then I realized why they do that. It's not that they're ignoring what the woman said. It's that they weren't even listening when she spoke. Get the gavel, they listen. No, but it is, so you just have to, the most important thing that I would say about my approach to thing is, I may try to take people to a different place or a more intense point of view, or not. Or maybe you want to temper some of the point of view. But if you have a plan, you have a chance. So I always say, a vision, I always like a room full of dreamers. If the dreamers have a plan, all the better. A vision with a plan is a success. A vision without a plan, it's a fantasy. So always try to have that. Remember I said they had the vision, and based on your knowledge to strategically plan how you would, when people know you have a plan, they pay much more attention, more likely to go along with it. And that's how we were able to do some things like pass the Affordable Care Act and those kinds of things, which were really groundbreaking. But we said to them, we're going to break ground, and we're not leaving it broken. We're going to make sure that we succeed in passing the legislation. So I hope that's helpful.
That's great.
But know your power, be ready, have a plan.
And
listen, be be respectful. I mean, I do listen because you have to have the confidence, but also the humility to listen and to learn and do better.
And has your leadership style changed over time?
Well, I've become more braggadocio. Now I'm more assertive in saying, yeah, we did this together, and this is why we did it, and the women played a major role, because sometimes you just like to be under the radar and just get your success. But other times you have to say, this is what you're reckoning with. And having the 91 women in Congress, that's a really important thing. And coming from California. Remember I told you I was tired of losing? So I said, I'm going to take responsibility for California. At that time, we had 26 Democrats. Am I allowed to? This is not politics, this is history. 26 Democrats, 26 Republicans, 52. We would later get one more through reapportionment to 53, but 26. So I said, in this next election, just wait and see what we do. At the end of that election in 2000, we had 31 Democrats and 21 Republicans. So we just went out there, knew what our message had to be. Our message, our mobilization, own the ground, don't yield one grain of sand. The money to get the job done, the management of it all, most importantly, the candidates who would be completely suitable, a match for their district. Lots of M's here, speak alliteratively, so that people remember, or that I do. And so now you know what we have? We have 53 members of Congress, 46 Democrats, and 7 Republicans. And that's how we have the majority in the Congress of the United States. But we have many Democrats from all over the country as well.
And that's, so we are going to get to impeachment.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to impeach, but if you want to talk about it.
But I did want to, because when we were talking before, one of the things that you said was the great issue of our time is climate change. So I have a question from Lauren Phillips. Is Lauren here?
Hi, Lauren. Thank you. Does anyone else have a climate question? You want to stand up and identify with that?
So Lauren's question is, many people my age are deeply worried about the climate crisis. As Speaker, what is your plan to ensure that the United States draws down greenhouse gas emissions in line with what science says is necessary to avoid catastrophic global climate change? Terrific question.
Thank you, Lauren. When I was Speaker the first time, my flagship issue was climate and energy independence. We saw them as related. And we established a select committee on climate. Ed Markey chaired it. And we went all over the world, even under the polls. I couldn't go everywhere they were going because I had this other day job. But whether it was security, climate as a security issue, and the generals and the national security people came in and said, if we don't mitigate for what's happening out there, we're going to have national security issues. So we saw it as an economic issue, that America must be number one in terms of the green technologies to reach our goals, our mission goals. 2, we saw it as a public health issue. Clean air, clean water, food safety, all of the things that relate to the good health of the people of the world and our responsibility to the American people and beyond. We saw it as a national security issue. We could spend the whole day on climate issues here, but was droughts and famines and drying up of the great rivers of Asia and the rest of that, all causing migration issues which could fan the flame of violence in some places. And we saw it as a moral issue, as I mentioned earlier, as far as the evangelicals are concerned. We saw this as God's creation, and we had moral responsibility to be good stewards, but in any event, from one generation to the next, we had that responsibility. So we did incredible things. We passed the bill that the Dean mentioned about the 2007 Energy Act signed by President Bush. He wanted nuclear, I wanted renewables. We came to a conclusion that was safe, and it was the equivalent of taking tens of millions of cars off the road by increasing the emission standard, the emission standards. And it did many other things as well. We made the capital model. I had to fight Senator Byrd to stop having a coal power plant fuel the House of Representatives. But in any event, we did that. But after we lost, they reversed everything. They don't have recycling, it just all trash goes in one place. They put styrofoam and all that stuff in the cafeteria. Now that's a minor thing, the greening of the Capitol. It's just symbolic, but important to show that we were greening the Capitol. But what we did all over the world in terms of motivation and incentives for mitigation for people losing their home. Go to Alaska, see what's happening there. It's sad. So then now we come in again, and the world is more aware. We were up against such denial in the White House, and even though President Bush joined us on the energy bill, in denial over climate. Europe was way ahead of us. The European Union was way ahead of us. We all went to Copenhagen, and the Europeans could see what we were up against here in terms of denial. They're still in denial, but we have another select committee chaired by Kathy Castor of Florida, absolutely, totally fabulous. 3 of the freshmen are on the select committee, and again, it's about jobs, it's about public health, it's about national security, it's about faith, our responsibilities to this planet, our values. And it is, right now they're taking all of the testimony as to what is the most aggressive, achievable, but beyond that, not the boldest common denominator that we can get to. And we just passed last week something called Climate Action Now, and that is to return to the Paris Accord, as well as saying to the president, what's your plan? What's your plan? Are you just ignoring this? But this is, for your generation, I considered it for mine, but for your generation, this is the issue. It's about the economy, it's about our security, it's about our health, it's about our values, it's about our planet, it's about our future. And it cannot be ignored. It applies in every way to everything that we do. It's pretty exciting. Now, we have some exuberances that may or may not be, when subjected to, is this really going to work or whatever it is, but that's the legislative process, and we'll put everything on the table as agnostically as possible to say, without prejudice, what will work the best way to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. But I'll tell you, they're out there. The industry is out there just advertising themselves as protectors of the environment. Oh my God. Oh my God. So it's a wonderful challenge, and it is absolutely, totally essential. And we have a tremendous responsibility, but my faith is in young people because you understand it. I don't know. I say to my colleagues in Congress, do you have children who breathe air? Grandchildren maybe or something, but it's amazing the denial that is there. But that's why for our For the People agenda, we were lower healthcare costs by lowering the cost of prescription drugs, bigger paychecks by building the infrastructure of America in a green way, and H.R. 1, cleaner government. Lower health care, bigger costs, bigger paychecks, cleaner government. And people believe that if you do reduce the role of dark, special interest money, that there's a chance you can prevail over the special dark interest money that goes into fighting the climate issue, the gun issue, the lowering cost of prescription drug issue, name any issue. People know that if money, the role of money is reduced, you'll have a better shot at getting better policy. And by the way, speaking of money, I'll say this back to women. If we reduce the role of money in politics and increase the level of civility, we'll have many, many, many more women in politics and government, and that would be a good thing.
So one of the topics that a lot of people are interested in is impeachment.
Because it's a law school?
Because it's a law school, right?
Because they're patriots? Because they're Americans?
So, you've spoken about impeachment and whether it's appropriate to pursue it at this time. How do you decide whether the time is right? Do you look at precedent? Do you talk to others in the House? What are the considerations?
The issue of impeachment is a very divisive issue for our country. And all the things I talked about, lowering healthcare costs, building the infrastructure, I'm not sure about the clearing government part, but the first two have strong bipartisan support in the Congress and with the president. He says he wants to do those. So we always try to choose issues that are unifying and not dividing as our priorities. There's some that are just going to be a fight. But, for example, in our first 10 bills that we have out there, the Equality Act, as I mentioned, the ending discrimination against the LGBT community, equal pay for equal work, Violence Against Women Act, Dreamers that we'll do probably next week, net neutrality legislation, gun violence protection, climate action now. Many of those issues, 80% in the public, 70 to 80% in the public, Democrats and Republicans alike, and some in the Congress of the United States. So you try to unite. Our founders gave us wonderful things, including a constitution that could be amended to expand freedom. Thank God they made it amendable. But what they also gave us was guidance, e pluribus unum, from many one. They couldn't imagine how many we would be or how different we would be from each other, but they knew we had to be one. Remember that we were one. So you try to be unifying. Impeachment is a very divisive thing. Now, we have a responsibility, the Constitution. We take an oath of office to protect and defend. The beauty of the Constitution is manifold, but one of its core beauties is that it is separation of powers, separate branches of co-equal branches of government to check and balance on each other. That is the heart of the Constitution, so that any branch could be preeminent. In fact, if there wouldn't be a branch that would be preeminent, it would be the legislative branch, because it is elected and frequently, and it is many people and a whole thing. But anyway, it's Article 1. So here's the thing. If you were to have a president who would defy his oath of office and reject the oversight responsibilities that are part of Article 1, if you had a president who might be perceived as obstructing justice by withholding information and threatening people who might provide that information, if those kinds of circumstances would exist, if you had an assault on our election that was clear and by the intelligence community conclusively that the Russians interfered with our election and there was some connection to possibly some person's campaign, it would maybe point to some actions in the Congress, in the courts, and in the court of public opinion. So we, trusting my chairmen, who are fabulous and wonderful and smart and strategic and evidence-based, we have a path where we are investigating in exercising our constitutional responsibility to have oversight, and also our constitutional responsibility as a separate branch of government to hold the other branch accountable, predicated on the fact that no person is above the law, not even the President of the United States. So, when you go to a place where you're looking at your options, you're doing oversight, which might lead to investigation, and you're getting you give friendly requests for information that may or may not be responded to. Then you go to a friendly subpoena, which may or may not be responded to by a possible president and his administration that might have engaged in certain activities. Then you go to a not-so-friendly subpoena and make certain, and then because you're lawyers, you know that you have to try for accommodation. Well, how can we get you to give us this information? How can we get you to give us the unredacted Mueller report, the truth for the American people? We have to insist upon that. Now, we want to be accommodating on how we do this and what is truly a source and method that we have to protect, what is truly a law enforcement piece that should not be revealed necessarily at that time. Okay, I'm an intelligence person longer than anybody in the Congress, and I understand about sources and methods, so they shouldn't use that as an excuse. Okay, so you're on a trail of investigation, a path of investigation. At some point, what serves your purpose in the courts? You have to demonstrate accommodation. Stop me if this is more on the subject than you ever want to know. But secondly, you have to show your purpose. Now, last night, the White House put out a disgraceful letter, shame on them, because it basically said that Congress has no right to investigate anything that any president does. But you have to read it because it's horrible, and I don't want to ruin your afternoon any worse than it may already be. But one of the things that has standing in the court, show your accommodation, but also this information has a purpose: to honor our oversight responsibilities, to hold the other branch accountable, and in case we want to impeach. That is a purpose in the Constitution, honored by the court as a purpose for getting the information. Because last night what they were saying is, unless this has a legislative purpose, there's no reason for us to give you anything. No, it could have an impeachment purpose. Now, I don't want to impeach. I want them to give us the information before they have to spend too much more money on lawyers. But that, no offense. I'm just thinking of their own personal situations, but or maybe we do. But anyway, you see the point. So you're on a path, oversight, investigation, turn you down. Okay, the court wants to see the constitutional purpose. Constitutional purpose is we may, among other things, need this for an impeachment purpose. Now, don't tell anybody I told you that. The other thing that we can do is contempt, which we probably will do. So what kind of contempt? Is it civil contempt? Is it criminal contempt? Or is it inherent contempt? In inherent contempt, we can, and that's just the House of Representatives. We don't need the Senate for any of that. In inherent contempt, subpoena, blah, 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 you go through all the things, accommodation, and the rest, and then possibly you hold them in inherent contempt. If they do not comply, you exact fines, and they have to pay the fines, or else you have recourse. So there's two possible places that might be a motivation for somebody to answer a subpoena earlier on. And that would be my hope, is that we don't have to go to any other place. But these are just options that are out there. I think the president every day gives grounds for impeachment in terms of his obstruction of justice. You never say blanketly, I'm not answering any subpoenas. Article 3 of the Nixon impeachment was he refused to honor the subpoenas of Congress. So, but again, you mentioned history, so I mentioned that as a reference. But everybody today is an instant gratification. You got a subpoena, we want somebody to go to jail. No, it takes time, right, Denny? Cases take time, and you all know that. And so we can't have the instant gratification that people want right now and here because they want to know what's in the Mueller report and this or that. We have to get it, and it takes time. And historically, during the Nixon, history will show, they had investigations for a long time before they introduced the articles of impeachment. And when they did, he was never impeached. Finally, the Republicans said, okay, it's over. The shameful part of this, if I may cross the line into politics, I don't know if this is politics, the Republicans are absolutely, totally not honoring their oath of office by what they're ignoring in the White House right now. But again, our founders, that they said, the times have found us, found them to found this country, found Lincoln to hold it together, found us and you to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And it doesn't mean that we put ourselves in the category of our founders. What a blessing they were. Lincoln, what a miracle he was. But the urgency of now is very clear. And whoever the president is, Democratic or Republican, this has nothing to do with politics, Democratic or Republican, it's trivial. And I say to my colleagues in terms of the subject, and to my supporters who want him impeached like before, this isn't about passion, it's not about prejudice, it's not about politics, it's about the presentation of the facts. It's about patriotism. And whatever that path takes us, we cannot resist. But on the other hand, we have to exhaust every other remedy on the way. And again, use the tools at our disposal, even if that means saying one possible use of this investigation might be impeachment, even though I don't want to go to that place. But if that's what protects us in court. As I say in court, let me finish by just saying, Doug Letter, you mentioned Doug, fabulous. Just fabulous. Thank you, Georgetown, for Doug Letter. Our members are so proud. He's so wise, so knowledgeable, and argued for us already twice before the Supreme Court, once to protect the census. They're assaulting the census because, well, no time to go into that. And then the Affordable Care, and there are other things as well. But think of you. Look at your beautiful futures, the magnificent education you have received here, grounded in the values of Georgetown, enlightened by the quality of your professors and the rest, bringing who you are to it and interacting with each other in the mix of things. We take great pride in the fact that you're right down the street from us, and one day you'll be studying, well, maybe even now, studying the laws that we have made, but certainly executing them or operating under the jurisdiction of them. So thank you. Thank you for taking the step to become a custodian of justice in our country, because that is really what it's all about, liberty and justice for all. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Jim.
That was extraordinary. I think that perfectly captures what our mission is. Georgetown Law is about educating people who will be custodians of justice and champions of liberty. And what more perfect way to end your time at Georgetown and to embark on your careers as lawyers, to hear from someone who is such an extraordinary leader and is so committed to the values that we cherish. Madam Speaker.